listening, what are you thinking about? Are there specific questions? Just know that I muted all of you, so you'll have to unmute yourself to ask a question.
I have a question. I'm Sarah. I'm in LA, and we're doing our first seder this year. And we're focusing a lot, not only on base building among people the hundreds who are on our mailing list who we rarely see, but also on coalition partners. And as you were saying, Wendy, people that we've worked with on other issues. And I'm wondering at what point in the Haggadah you make room for these folks to speak?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. That's a great question. We try to tie it in often to the wine, the glasses of wine. So if we toast to education, so then it could be like an anti-Islamophobia education campaign. So, or like we toast to BDS, it's like something connected. So it's like that's generally, I think, where we do it. And I think also it's so easy because I think like Rabbi Linda was saying, it's just such a easy, because it's a journey to liberation. I think there's just so many opportunities to, whenever you feel like it, honestly, bring in a coalition partner, because you're talking about most of our Haggadah is about the intersecting goals on our journey to liberation. So I think we tend to do it with the glasses of wine, those toasts, but I think it can happen anywhere.
We also do with poetry. We have poetry in our Haggadah, and we ask particular readers to prepare poems, and that's been a really sweet way to bring other voices in.
Yeah, I was going to say that we also use with the 4 questions, that what we'll often do is have questions that are not the 4 questions that are in the Haggadah, but that are questions that are about whatever the topic is for that year. Like if it's Palestinian liberation, they can be 4 questions, and then have people at individual tables sitting and talking, or just opening up in some way for people who are our coalition partners to really share what they're doing and the ways that what their perspective is. And the children, there's this whole section of the Haggadah that's like the 4 children who all have a different reaction to Passover, and to in some way use that to say like that there are very different perspectives on this holiday. How do you see liberation? How do you see liberation? Or whatever your question is. Like, you can do all kinds of things with it.
Thank you. That's really helpful and inspiring.
Also, anyone else can offer suggestions too, not just our 3, not just the 4 presenters. That's who we're doing. Oh, I like that, 4 ancestors. Hannah asked a question earlier that I want to actually know the answer to. I wonder if you know, Linda, or anyone else, truly. Did we always say next year in Jerusalem? Was that a part of original liturgy?
I don't remember when it actually came into the Haggadah. I think it's pretty old. And it's not about the state of Israel. Like, it didn't start as anything about the state of Israel. It way predates the state of Israel. And it really was, there was a kind of a fantasy about mythic Jerusalem that has been alive for lots and lots and lots of Jewish history. I mean, there are these love poems that are written in the Middle Ages that are kind of about mythic Jerusalem, not the Jerusalem that's on the ground, but like the Jerusalem that's in the air. There are 2 Jerusalems that are pictured. One is Yerushalayim Shel Mata, like the Jerusalem that's on the ground, the actual people living there. And one is Yerushalayim Shel Mala, which is the Jerusalem that is in our metaphor for perfect city. And it's much more connected to that. When with the state of Israel, it just complicates it, because it's harder for us to look at it and say, oh, it's about this grand, glorious city in our metaphors and our dreams. when there is a real Jerusalem where people are being seriously oppressed every day. So it complicates it more.
Any questions, Randy, Farrell, Jill? We've got more information to share. Maybe it'll spark some more. Okay, this time we're gonna have Seattle start and then New Orleans. And so the topic of this one is best practices for creating. I think we're probably gonna focus on public seders this time. So if people are thinking about private in your home seders, also feel free to ask those questions when we get there. But all right, Seattle, I'm gonna give you 7 minutes.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, so we just update our program every year with whatever content is relevant. So there's always parts that stay the same that people know are going to be there. And then there are parts that we update. We always ask different participants to read different parts so that we get to include a lot of different voices. And that's another way to honor coalition partners, is also to ask them to read a part of the Seder. And then if they want, they can also add more content that's relevant to the work they do, or sometimes they just read the part, and that feels like a good way to be, like, have their voice as part of the Seder.
Totally. And I will say that it's been really meaningful for me over the years to be at the Seder and have coalition partners reading. And I think it's been one of the only times where there have been non-Jewish folks like doing leadership in Jewish ritual space. And that's been really powerful. I've really loved and appreciated that. So another big do is food. Like, it's huge. It's really huge to have enough food. And food is really holding for people, and it's really connecting, and it gives folks something to talk about, something to get excited about. And a Seder is long. And for some of us, it's like it starts kind of late, and there's a lot of like ritual that happens around how to eat. So making sure that there's enough food is really important. And the way that we organize it is based on last names. So these folks of the alphabet bring, desserts, whatever. And we also make a request that folks are mindful of honoring the boycott in the foods and ritual foods that they bring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one other thing about food is that we do have like snacks. So we'll have like nuts and fruit at the table. And then the way that we divide that up too is that we always provide the ritual food. So we have the Seder plates for the tables, and then the rest of it is a potluck. Yeah, and then I think just another thing we've learned over the years is that we always divide up the logistics team and the folks who are working on the program, because each thing is just it's just such a big task. And so we split that up. So we have a program team who's working on updating the content and getting people to read things. And then we have a logistics team that, like, especially for to get all the ritual food and to get all the eggs boiled, like there's just so much. So it's good to separate those two and have them just be different teams of people who are like talking to each other and coordinating, but aren't having to do everything all the time for the Seder.
Our next do is around songs and song leading. We actually don't have a huge singing culture in Seattle. Our ritual spaces are not often filled with a lot of song. So it's made a huge difference for us to have really confident song leaders at the Seder who are willing to get up there and really bring energy and hold the energy. And we've gotten feedback the last couple of years that people have really, really loved it. And it's been a really meaningful way to bring a lot of voices in the room. So it's taken us some time to get that leadership up to where we want it. And now that we have it, we're like, yes, 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 and trying to bring more.
Cool. Another thing we do, I think we already touched on, is just like we make sure that friends, comrades, family, everyone is welcome, and that if you're not Jewish, you can kind of make sense of what's happening. So there's explanations for all the rituals and the customs. And then we always invite folks at their table to just have a moment to share, like, what brought them there, what is the work that they do. So like we're also simultaneously building community as we like go through this journey to liberation together.
Yeah, any opportunity I would say in the program to get folks talking like one-on-one or at the table is really great, and just breaking up what can be a long program of listening and give some opportunity for connecting. So we center the content of the Haggadah around Palestine liberation work and the work that we as a chapter do, and we bring in all kinds of organizing work that the chapter is connected to. So Wendy had mentioned earlier, like the No New Youth Jail campaign, and like other campaign work that we do, just to like really make it clear that the work that we do is also connected, and the importance of that on the holiday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I think our final do is that we really try to create a warm and celebratory atmosphere for our Pesach, even as some of it is like very intense. Like last year we talked about, it was the beginning of the Great March of Return. And so it's like we were really mourning deaths. So it's like we try to balance that we're really celebrating being together, even as it's like there are real forces in our way for all of us to move towards liberation. And so it's just like, how do we just kind of like, I think one of the ways we acknowledge it is that we say that's what we're doing. That's like we're both holding mourning space often, or we're holding space for like what gets in the way on our journey to liberation, even as we're celebrating the journey of being together. And so I think like that just makes for like a complex space, but we want to, it's just like we want to have a place where we can celebrate and enjoy each other's company and be together joyously as we're holding, the real like tragedies and horrors of our time. So I think both and for that is one of the ways that we kind of hold space in Seattle.
Yeah, thanks for that, Wendy. And I would add that the invitation for that kind of emotion coming into the ritual space really requires us as a chapter and as individuals to be really mindful of what it means to have a welcoming presence. Seattle is not a place that is known for being warm or welcoming generally overall. And, every place is different. Every place has its culture. And so we've really had to have some consciousness around like, what does it mean to welcome people in and make people feel welcome and talk about that? So I just say that because I imagine each of you have your own cultural experience happening in the place where you are. And it is really important to think about like, how do you want to be welcomed and how do you want to welcome people in?
Thank you. I took a lot of notes on that one. Thanks, y'all. And then I see the questions on the side and have them in the docket. Let's give Hannah 3 minutes to respond and share some information, and then we'll give more space for all of you.
Okay, I'm a little conflicted now because I have some stuff written down from someone else, but I just like, I don't know. It was just really interesting. So I want to just keep talking about what you all just said. I'm trying to remember the thing that was last said. Oh, the welcoming thing. I mean, the welcoming thing is so interesting because New Orleans definitely has a reputation of being welcoming. And yet we still really we have a lot of challenges with that. I mean, like the politics, like last year, our invitation to seder said we were anti-Zionist in a really bold, loud way, and still tried to make it feel welcoming, which is like, whoa, we're probably all dealing with that question. Welcoming enough that we could bring in folks who would feel uncomfortable by that statement, and coalition partners at the same time. I mean, it's just like, wow, a lot to balance. And I want to say one thing about food, which is I think we have a similar number of people. And I think because of like Passover rules, we decided to I'm just adding this because like for whoever is thinking like what could work for us. We actually make all of the food, but we